Well, as promised, the president of Tutor is on the Zoom line with me. We had our pre-budget discussions, and now we're getting to our post-budget perspective. Martin Lum Kin joins me on the Zoom line. Mr. Lum Kin, great to see you as always. I look forward to our conversation on this Wednesday morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Williams, and good morning to your viewers. Always an honor and a pleasure to be on your program. Thank you for having Tutor once again.
For sure, and the feeling is mutual. So let me ask you, Comrade Lum Kin, I'm looking at the allocation, $7 billion plus. I know lots of that is to deal with recurrent expenditure, and we would have seen via the happenings at the start of the school year, issues coming into the fold and playing out in the public domain. Are we getting bang for our buck? Are we getting value for money based on the current structure and the way the monies are dispersed and the way it's handled?
The view of Tutor is that by and large, we are not getting really true value for our money. Yes, recurring expenditure will take a substantial part of the budget, but when it comes to the needs of the education system, we are not seeing it translated into real activities and real projects that we would like to see. As you are aware, at the beginning of the school term and the academic year, we had challenges with a number of schools as it relates to infrastructure, health, and safety, and that continues. And we are also getting the sense that the release from the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Education is not as timely as it should be. And that in itself presents a number of issues and problems. But by and large, we are not seeing true value for our money. We are seeing, yes, in some instances, and we have to admit, in some instances, you are seeing some improvement, slight improvement, but generally, it's not what we would like it to be.
Let me ask you concerning the 5%, and we could actually go to the front page of The Guardian. I don't know if you saw it this morning, but it says...
I didn't get it.
Well, we could put it up for you to see. It's there big and bold where they're saying the unions not feeling that 5% at all. Now, it's not your picture, actually. It's the picture of the president of the PSA, Leroy Batiste. But the reality is, even via your sentiments expressed on the news last evening, I heard it in your voice, Mr. Lum Kin. I could tell you took some offense to this 5% offer. I want to give you a chance to express and to elaborate some more on why this 5% is not one that you're favorable towards, and what is a more workable solution at this point in time.
Our concern isn't really the percentage increase. And let me say as well that within the teaching service, negotiations do not go the way of percentage increase purely. It is the external labor market survey, which we have established with the personnel department and the CPO since 2000. That's the methodology to which we would seek increases in salary to have that memorandum of agreement. And so it could be in the government's mind, in the public's mind, 10%, 100%, whatever. The principle behind the negotiations is what is irking us right now. It's disrespectful in our view, because you are presenting in the public domain without going through the necessary procedures and policies that we would have had in the past. So you have circumvented the process of negotiations by public decree, by making a public pronouncement that we will give you 5%, take it or leave it. It is seemed to be. But you have not, we don't negotiate with the Minister of Finance directly. Our negotiations, bilateral negotiations, is between the employer's representative, which is the CPO, and the recognized majority union, in this case, Tutor. We have not sat around the table. And quite ironically, on Thursday last, 26th of September, when we met with the chief personnel officer, the question was asked to the goodly gentleman. And he responded by saying he has not gotten instructions to negotiate. So is it that now, because he hasn't been given instructions, the negotiation is with the Minister of Finance and that direct response of 5%. Now, we find it, very disrespectful that you can make a public pronouncement. Even if you can only afford 5%, let us meet around the table, let's bargain, let's hammer out, let us present our situation. Let us, in our case, see what the market throws up and see how best we can close that gap from the last, quite strangely and frankly, we don't even have a market survey for the last period. We would have done one for the period before, but this one, when we had to accept the 4% as is bandied, we didn't even explore what the market says. So now we have to bridge that gap and explore what the market says. And that is the crux of the matter at this time.
So in essence, you're saying that in the lower house, during a budget presentation, it was not the time or place to bring up this 5%. This should have been behind closed doors, sit down, talk with the CPU and other representatives to really trash out and throw up the numbers and probably come to some working number and conclusion. That's more or less the crux of what you're saying this morning.
Yes, it is. And it seems that the government of the day is trying to circumvent even collective bargaining, because part of collective bargaining is salary increases. And if you are doing that and you have now eliminated that process, then there will be other instances of collective bargaining that you can see that, take it or leave it. There's no process of bargaining. There's no process of negotiations. And it is, in a way, the government trying to get rid of unions and associations. And we will not stand for that. Understood.
I'm seeing the development with the e-textbooks to be implemented in the school system by June 2025. That seems to be some good news. What's your take on that development?
Yes, it will benefit the students of Trinidad and Tobago. But let me say that we would have heard about ebooks a number of years ago, probably 5-7 years ago, more than that. They talk of ebooks, and we've been looking forward to it. We look forward to the revelation of how it's going to be implemented, because we're not sure what will be used. Now, to have ebooks means that the players in the scenario needs to have devices, students as well as educators. Is the government going to be providing devices for our nation's educators?
And not only devices, Mr. Lum Kin, also connectivity. Is every school in the country connected?
Not every school is connected. There are those that have partial connection, and the connection really gives a lot of problem. But then you have to also look at electricity as well too. Can the present electrical system take the load when a number of devices are plugged in? Now, I know that in the United States, in some states, they provide the students with a device that is preloaded with the books. Is it going to be that case, or is it going to be a matter of you go online, you go to a site for the books? Now, we're also hoping that there will be a level of transparency in this process as well. It is not a matter of giving persons who are associated with members of the government that is going to be the best providers for both the hardware and software. But it can benefit the education system, and we will support once the necessary resources are put in place, the structures are put in place, and there's a level of transparency throughout.
Indeed. Is there transparency with the book grant system? Because we're talking $20 million allocated to this particular program. About 20,000 people would have benefited in 2024, but yet still people who are vulnerable always complain that they don't get through, they're not getting access. What's your take on the book grant system and its continuation?
And we will support any services that benefit the most vulnerable in our society, especially when it comes to education. So the access of book grants is a good idea. However, we would want to have transparent measures. The means test is an ideal way of determining who can get the book grant. But in this instance, and I would imagine in the next instance, it is not, the school doesn't have a direct impact. The parents have to apply online, and it is determined based on the information by the Ministry of Education. We have not, tutor, gotten any feedback that there was anything untoward. The fact that you have to apply online is one probably deterrent for vulnerable persons. But if they are given access at various governmental support agencies or even through the school, we will support that as well too. But through the school has to be worked out very carefully, because the school is always bombarded, or the level of work within the school for our administrators, our educators, they are overloaded at some time. And to burden them with that additional work, we are cautious about that. If it is done by some support of the Ministry of Education, probably through the district offices, then we will support that as well. One issue I want to, on the book grant, I want to say, and very quickly, our school supervisors were asked to collect the checks and bring it to the district offices. And they had a concern about that, safety-wise, as well as if it's within their job description. Now, eventually they did it, but they have a concern. There should be another method of having these checks distributed without placing our school supervisors at risk in having those checks on them.
Yeah, because I mean, we live in a time, I mean, we all know what's the reality of the day in Trinidad and Tobago, so I understand the safety concern in that regard. Let's transition to GATE. I understand there's going to be some enhancements towards the fourth quarter of 2024. Were you told more details? What's your interpretation of that based on the budget speech? What was said by the finance minister? Let's take it now to GATE.
So GATE is a social service that is provided to the less fortunate and the more vulnerable persons in society, and we support GATE throughout. Now, GATE has been reduced to only persons who are seeking undergraduate. There are some postgraduate courses that are necessary, especially in the teaching service, especially when our educators need to enhance their skills, retool themselves. And we were hoping that it would have included some level of postgraduate where our educators can access. Another thing with GATE should be geared towards national development, where there is a need for certain professions and sectors to be improved, then you should be targeting those areas as well too. And so as GATE continues, we will support, we will look forward to enhance GATE programs, accessibility to programs within the GATE system, because as you know, tertiary education is not cheap and a number of persons cannot afford, and even with GATE, then there are the other expenses of living and books and so on. But it helps in the long run, and we will continue to support it once it is geared towards national development.
You know, you mentioned books, and I want to take it back to that textbook scenario, and it's a question that one of the callers presented to me and the wider audience a couple of months ago, where they were asking, and again, we could all relate to when we were going to school, you could have passed down books, you could have got a book from a cousin, a brother. More or less the books remain the same for a couple of years. Now we find ourselves with this reality of a couple of words or a text or a chapter being changed, and all of a sudden it's a whole new book for the next year. What's your understanding of that system? You know, who could have that greater conversation to ensure that people are able to now pass down some of these textbooks and not having to change every single year, especially those who exist in a household with more than one child. You can't even pass it from the big brother to the small sister, who probably 2 years apart. Every year the book list is coming out and there are major changes and people have to find the resources to pay for these said books. What's your understanding of that development?
So the sale and provision and publishing of textbooks is a big money gain in some quarters for some publishers and so. And the fact that they have revised edition almost every year costs not only the parents but costs the education system millions of dollars in our estimation. And to us that should not be acceptable. And we have appealed to our members within the teaching service to ensure that they utilize textbooks that are constant, that do not change often. And even if they do, that they should peruse the new edition and see where the changes are. And if they can accept the previous edition or editions, going back, then they should allow families, students to utilize that textbook. Now, there is a set of textbooks throughout the education system. There used to be the textbook rental system, and I am imagining that the East book system is going to replace that. And a number of times, the educators, the teachers in the classroom would ask for books to supplement what is being used in the classroom. And on all instances, if textbooks are requested from parents, we advise our members, and by and large they do it. I have to admit, they do use it. There are some who would put textbooks and not use it for the academic year, and that we condemn strongly. Yeah. But once you have textbooks on the book list and parents would have purchased them, then you need to utilize them to supplement your teaching and learning experience.
I'm really happy that accommodation is in place. As we wrap things up, Mr. Lum Kin, as a principal, as a teacher, educator yourself, what grade would you give the budget 2024-2025? Of course, we know A and A+ is a passing grade. F means to wheel and come again. What's your grade on that budget?
I would say we're looking at probably a C or B. There are positive aspects to the budget, and we understand that the government will be challenged in these times to really provide the type of services and funding. I am of the belief that no government would want to suffer the people to the point where they are frustrated. I mean, we are frustrated at this time, but we understand the economic situation. And I know that successive governments, as well as this one, will try its best. But sometimes we do not see it being translated. And so when you look at the numbers, we would have liked to have more funding. And it was revealed by the Honorable Minister of Finance that when it comes to infrastructure and health and safety, that they will be seeking external funding. Nice. We are appreciative of that. We are hopeful as well too, but we are cautious as well. We hope that it does not put a drain or a strain on the economy, because when you take loans, you have to repay those loans and with interest. But we are hopeful that the ministry, and by extension, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, can address the infrastructural and furniture. Mr. Williams, I cannot overemphasize furniture in our nation's schools, both Trinidad and Tobago. And we were looking for an increased funding to the THA, because that will also translate to increased funding in the division. And the division has a number of outstanding issues, back pay in terms of some of the persons, as well as increments and upgrades.
Mr. Lum Kin, I want to thank you as always. We'll touch base soon. All the best. And let's, again, continue to, put forward solutions and try to work to ensure our education system is robust and well-oiled, because obviously education is so integral to the country's development. All the best, Mr. Lum Kin. Thanks for touching base.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All the best to you and your station as well. Thank you.
For sure. We're going to come back with political scientist Dr. Shane Mohammed to give his perspective on budget 2024-2025. Dr. Mohammed, up next.